Hey, welcome into the REVO Church Podcast. I'm Jamie. I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm so excited you clicked on this video. This is episode 2 on our podcast dedicated to the next generation of how you can pour into the lives of kids, of students, of whether it's your kids, your grandkids, or maybe you just really want to see the next generation flourish. I'm excited you clicked on this video. This is episode 2. See, last week we had the dads on the podcast. And they were able to come in. They dropped a little bit of knowledge, but really they were just telling dad jokes. You know the way it goes. But I'm so excited because today I have maybe 2 of the coolest moms that I've ever been around. They are going to drop wisdom, knowledge. I'm excited to have you on the podcast. So I'll give you a second just to introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Donna Cawthron. I have 3 children and married to Clark Cawthron. 3 children and 2 grandchildren.
Woo.
Yeah, I can't forget them. Kristen, Matthew, and Katie, they're each 3 years apart. So they're 30, 27, and 24. So I might be the dinosaur of the podcast.
No, this is great.
And then Carson and Caleb are 2 and 8 months.
Yes.
So I'm Elizabeth Klein. I have 2 girls. They are finishing up 5th grade and 9th grade. I am married to Nathan Klein, who is a frequent visitor of the podcast here. So normally this is his job, but I'm filling in today as moms, and so that's who I am.
Yeah, that's great. I'm excited for it. I know last week we had a couple dads in the room, and they were able to talk a little bit. I actually had Jason, Kristen's husband, on the podcast. And so
We'll have to watch
I asked him the question. I was like, so what made you such a good dad? And he was like, the dad jokes, obviously. He was like, they just continued to be perfected. But I'm excited about it. Today we are talking about pouring into the next generation with moms. So my first question, it's a really simple one. Donna, I want to throw it to you first. As your kids were growing up and even now, was there prayers that you were consistently praying over them?
Yes, very different in different stages. So when they were and I like to pray scripture, because then if you pray scripture, you know you're praying God's will for them. So I would pray when they were little that they would grow in stature and in favor and wisdom. Just like they said about Jesus in Luke, that he grew, and I'm not quoting it exactly, but they said about Jesus that he grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. So I would pray that for them when they were young. Now they're adults, so I'm praying that God would increase their love for him, give them discernment in their choices and wisdom, and then give them more increase their peace. I also liked, when they were growing up, I liked verses in Ephesians 1 and Ephesians 3 that I would pray over them. Ephesians 1 was about God enlighten their minds and their eyes of their hearts so that they might know the hope of their calling. And God has been gracious to do that. And then Ephesians 3 is the one where they would know the love of God that is higher, wider, deeper, and longer than we could even, and it surpasses knowledge that we can even understand, and so that they would increase in love. Sorry, I might have talked too long.
No,
Go
that's
for
great.
it.
I love that.
Yeah, so my girls are in a different place in life. You know, they're entering into the tween and teen years, and so mine obviously look a little different now than what Donna's look like. But mine are very similar in that I pray for them to grow into a relationship with Jesus primarily. I pray that they would make good choices and be kind to others and choose good friends, and that they would have joy when things get hard, and that they would have joy in serving others, and just that they would be able to be bold in a place where being in middle school and high school is hard these days, and that they would be able to boldly live out a faith that we are still teaching them. And so that's kind of where I am with my girls.
Yeah,
That's good.
I think that's really good. So what I know kids are like a sponge. They will just absorb things that they hear. They'll repeat things that are said. even when sometimes maybe you don't want them to repeat something. But I would love to know, like, as you know, as they're growing up, as you know, Elizabeth, your daughters are younger. Was there things, as they were growing up and even now that you guys try to do to instill just the faith in them?
Yeah. So, first off, we make Sundays a priority, which means we have to make Saturday nights a priority. And so, we don't do a lot of things on Saturday nights. We are in the bed because we know we have to get up and we're going to come to REVO the next morning, and going ahead and establishing that as part of their rhythm of their week.
Yeah.
My kids don't really know anything different on a Sunday morning than coming to be in our world and being at REVO on Sunday morning. And they love to be here. They enjoy coming and serving along with their dad and their mom, because we do a lot of things even throughout the week that people don't know that we're here doing. And they take pride in knowing that they did that during the week. Like, they may have come up here and helped put pens in the back of the chairs after the service or something, and that they got to do that. And so being able to live that out as an example of how we serve others and how we help our church, and making Sunday mornings part of the priority. And then when they would we finish a lesson of our world, we're in the car going to lunch or whatever, we're talking about that.
Yeah.
And parents get an email from our world I think it comes out on Wednesdays, so we know what's coming. I know what they've talked about in our world. And so when I ask, what did you learn about in our world this week, I already know, and we can talk about that. And so it's not just Lydia telling me what she learned. I know what she learned, and so I have the chance to ask her some follow-up questions and see what she pulled away from it. And Leah is sitting in the service with me, and so I know what she's hearing because I'm hearing it at the same time she is. And so we are able to talk about that, and on the way home or to lunch or wherever we're going. And so those are two of the ways that we really try to enforce Sundays and making Sundays a priority, which is again a Saturday night decision.
Yeah.
It's not a Sunday morning decision.
I would just curiosity, getting the emails from our world. Is there ever a time where Lydia tells you something she learned and you're like,
that is not
you
there.
were not paying attention?
Well, sometimes the so-and-so show that they show, as part of the lesson before they do the actual Bible lesson, is usually something fun, and they'll tie it back into their Bible lesson, but it's usually something irrelevant to. It's just silly fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes, what did you learn in our world? And it's whatever was on the so and show, not necessarily yes, it is a tongue twister, but it's not it's not necessarily the Bible study. I'm like, well, what did you learn about Jesus this week? I don't care what they did on the so and so show. What did you learn about Jesus today? And then she'll be, oh yeah, by the way, yes. So sometimes the big moment is not necessarily the Bible lesson. Sometimes it's whatever silly thing or whatever game they may have done or whatever. We got donuts today because we filled up our basket of balls. Okay, great. Like, what does that mean? Yeah, right. So.
No, I love that. Donna, what about you? I know your kids are older now, but growing up, were there things that you were able to maybe model or do to help them, make the faith their own?
Yeah, that was just a throwback. We went to a church for a while. We were not part of REVO because REVO didn't exist when my kids were your age. But they would give out a little paper that the kids came home with. And we also could do devotions. They had at certain age groups had little papers that came home with devotions every day. It had just like a scripture you could read and a question you could ask your child. And I always tried to do that with them. But I like talking over the lunch table, wherever we might be. I would always try, Clark and I both would try to get them talking about what they did at church. And children enjoying church is so important. I don't think everybody realizes just how important it is that a child enjoys their church experience. Yeah. And REVO does an outstanding job of helping children enjoy their church. But Clark and I also made church a priority. There was never any question. Sunday morning we go to church. we didn't always have the discipline on Saturday night to go to bed early enough to make it a smooth morning. So many mornings on Sunday would be chaotic trying to get out the door on time. But Sundays were an emphasis, and then any kind of youth or children's, any kind of program or fun thing, anything going on at church. Our social world was church.
Yeah.
And our friends and our family mostly came from church. And so therefore our children's friends were often church friends, and that helped a lot too. So we knew their parents, we knew we were all on the same page, and that was a big blessing. And we served a lot at church. I think, I look back now and I can see how we served and our children were watching us serve. We never told them they need to serve.
Yeah.
It was just what we did. So often, whatever age our children were, I was often teaching classes in that age group, somewhere around that age group. And so Clark and I taught 7th grade for a while to be in the youth department. Sorry. And then we taught high school juniors for a while. But I think being involved like that helps, and it models service to them.
I know something cool going, at all 3 campuses, at North, at South Fork, at Walkertown. We have students, kids serving in our world, serving in production, serving in all these different ways. And, you ask them, like, why are you serving? And they're just like, well, it's what we do. And then I think about it and I'm looking, and most all the time, the students, the kids that are serving, they're family serving. It's not just they decided to serve. It was from a very young age. They saw it modeled, like, this is what we do. In our family, we serve. In our family, we prioritize the Sunday morning. We prioritize Jesus. We prioritize the community of believers and really seek to pour into that. But talking about trying to, help lead your kids, is there any resources or any kind of, resources, websites, books, any of that you think really helped you when it comes to, instilling faith into your kids?
Most any book I've read about child rearing is hard to find these days, probably. But I did look up on Amazon, and my number one book that I love that I would highly recommend is Shepherding a Child's Heart by Ted Tripp. I don't know if you've heard of that. Okay.
But I will now.
Yeah, it was good because it spoke to the heart. So, because as parents, so many times we notice our child's actions and we discipline their actions.
Yeah.
But we really want to speak to their heart, because you want their heart to be at the right place, and then their actions will flow out of their heart.
Yep.
And so anyway, that book was very good.
I think there's a Bible verse that talks about that. Something about,
Maybe so.
Out of the abundance
of your heart,
the mouth
speaks.
I think I've read that somewhere.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you got it.
Yes.
You got it. And so that book was a big one. Prayer is huge. God hears our prayers, and God hears the prayers of moms and dads. And so I would say that was a big one.
So for me, one of the best resources is other moms like Donna. I know I've had multiple conversations with Donna over the years about seasons of life that I've been in, and how she navigated that with her kids, because I've looked up to other moms who I've seen their kids have turned out to be great people, and I want to know, how did you do that? And so talking to other moms who have done it successfully, despite their hiccups that may have had along the way, has been a huge resource to me. Even my own mom has been a great resource, as when we go through seasons, and she'll say, well, this is what we did when you were little, and so this might be good to do for your family as well. And I mean, yeah, that's a great point. And also REVO has down in our world, every month they have a different topic that has lots of resources and books for people who are going through very specific things, and they do things on child anxiety or technology usage, or just how to help kids manage their emotions, various things. And it's a great resource. And they also, a great thing thing on Instagram to follow is the Parent Queue. Parent Queue is something that REVO also uses their curriculum and things in our world. And so I know you don't always want to turn to social media to get your biblical guidance, but sometimes it can be a good thing, as is this. And so so looking at the Parent Queue and kind of some of the things that they have to say is also been beneficial.
Is that CUE?
Mm-hmm,
Key?
mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I know, like, growing up, I'm sure my parents probably had this fear. Sometimes it came true. Of sometimes it was true. Of you want your kids to hang around the right crowd of people. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Me. And then sometimes it's like perfect. Stay friends forever, BFFs. But I'd be curious to know, like, as your kids grow up, well, first question, did you ever try to, instill, like, these are the friends you should be looking for? Or this is, hey, that friend, maybe that's not you can talk to them, but maybe, like, not the best friend. Like, was there things that you did to try to help them see, like, a good friend versus a bad friend?
So right now, I get to control everything about my children's lives because they are not able to drive. They are not able to go anywhere without my consent. And so right now, I am able to pick my friends' kids to some extent. Now, who they choose to hang out with at school, I can't control that. But I can choose who they hang out with on the weekends or at night. And so that is one area where we choose to hang out with people, a lot of times as families, where I am friends with their moms.
Yep.
And just like Donna said, she did the same thing growing up, as a lot of her friends were from her church, and that was who her kids' friends were. And so right now, I don't have as much of a problem with it because they can't drive and they can't do anything outside of my control, really, within the hours that they're home with me. But something else I like to set as an example of who am I hanging out with and who are my friends. And when my kids can look at who my closest friends are and who I'm spending time with, they also know that my closest friends are followers of Jesus and they're serving others and they're going to Bible studies. Not all of them are necessarily here at REVO, but they know that my closest friends are all people that are following Jesus, and you become who your friends are.
Yep.
And so they see that. And I encourage them to do things. Leah, I encourage her, she's at West, and I encourage her to go to FCA. That's where you're going to meet people who are like-minded. And being with like-minded people who are at your school is going to be a great thing than just, not everybody that goes to REVO is at her high school. So find friends at school who can be friends. It can be like-minded and be thinking about the same things that you're thinking about and making the same choices that you're going to make and that you want to make, and help leading you closer to Jesus. And so, so those are, I think, setting an example of who your friends are and what you're doing with your friends is just set the example, because they're going to follow it.
Yeah.
That is true. And then inevitably, eventually, they'll get invited to someone's house or to a party. And I didn't want to say no a lot. I wanted to make my no's few.
Yeah.
And if I feel like off the cuff, if I had said to one of my teenagers, you don't need to be hanging out with them, which I may have said before, they might come back and say that I said that, because I remember thinking it many times, that this person could be a bad influence. We want our children to be a positive influence on others. We want their inner character to be strong enough to influence others. But the reality is exactly what Elizabeth said. You become like your 5 closest friends, is what psychology shows. And so we want our closest friends to be like-minded, to be Christian friends. So if they got invited somewhere that we didn't want them to go, my first choice would be, Clark, let's come up with something that we're going to do. What are we going to do Friday night before she gets invited to go XYZ? Or I know she has been invited. We need to give her an alternative. So we would try to come up with something fun that she's going to miss out on, or he's going to miss out on. And so they would want to do our thing first. If that didn't work, then we might have to say, we'd have to talk about, is that a good choice? What are they going to be doing? I'm a little concerned. And try to help them make the decision to not go.
Yeah.
We did have to say sometimes that's probably not a good place to go, or, I'm concerned about you going to her house, and we're not going to spend the night there. Now, I did say that many times because spending the night is crossing a line.
My kids have never spent the night at anyone's house outside of family.
Yeah, it's a different day now than when my kids were young. Now, I don't know that mine would. And I don't think Katie spent the night away very much because times were changing when she was coming along. But, so there were times when we went, no, you're not doing that. But we tried to make it fewer so that it would become their decision.
Yeah.
As they're getting in high school, you'll see that they feel like they're independent and they can make their own decisions. And you want to bless that. We want to bless their independence in a Christ-like way. Yes, you can make that decision. You are wise. But then at the same time,
I have never met a high schooler that did not think that they didn't know everything.
Right.
And so sometimes it's like, oh, that's a great idea. And then other times you're like, maybe
not. Yeah. Maybe not the best choice.
Maybe not the best choice.
Let's think about that again.
Let's try that again. But another, kind of following off of that, whether it's friends or maybe it's, playing a sport or a club, they end up interacting with friends or people that aren't Christian. Was there things that maybe you tried to do or maybe you saw your kids doing that was trying to maybe invite them to church or just pour into those kids' lives?
Yeah, we always wanted to have an open door policy at our house. So kids and friends were always welcome at our house, and we always tried to reach out and really get to know their friends, to be kind to them and be Christ-like to them. And then, of course, invite them to anything at the church that they would want to go to, and be the driver. I liked being the taxi driver, because then you get to hear the conversations going on in the back that the kids don't know you're listening to, because you're not listening, you're driving,
Yep.
But it was good being a taxi driver, and then you could interject. And then, of course, we always had Christian music going too.
Yeah, we do that. We don't really play anything other than Caleb and WBFJ in our car. I mean, it's on there, except during Christmas. Now, during Christmas, we turn it to the Christmas station. But
so do you start Christmas immediately after Thanksgiving or December 1st?
As early as Nathan will let us do it.
I like it.
So, yes, it is definitely in the month of November.
Okay.
For sure.
It's before Thanksgiving.
Usually it's before Thanksgiving. Yes. Not before Halloween, though. I don't do before
Do you
Halloween.
want more joy or less joy?
Well, what my kids say is Christmas is not a holiday, it's a vibe. So they listen to Christmas music all year.
Well, there
That's
you
what
go.
they say.
I like that. I like that.
But no, I think that's some great things, because I know a lot of times you do end up becoming who you're around. There's a verse that talks about iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. And so I think about it in that sense of like, whoever your kids are hanging around, they're going to end up becoming like. And the same works in reverse, hopefully the kids that are hanging around your kids are, well, hopefully you can say, I hope they're becoming like my kids in most areas. But, we do become like who we're around. And so I think that's just, that's something that I'm sure some parents think about, and, maybe some aren't thinking. And so hopefully just hearing that thought of like, oh, I always wanted to be the driver, because I could turn that music like one notch down, and I could hear what's really going on. And so I think that's something that's, really important, is just the idea of, being present and hearing and trying to be active. But one thing I'd love to,
having the speaker on for the music in the back, but not having it in the front is also helpful.
That's
so
a nice
they think
little
the
trick
music
there.
is louder.
yeah.
But you don't have a
hear it.
speaker in the front as the driver, but you can hear everything they're going, but you
Noted.
don't show any expression. They have no idea. But then you're praying over every little comment they make. I'd be praying.
That's
a
That's
nice,
a mom
that's a nice
tip right there.
piece of wisdom right there.
That
Thought
is-
about that. Yeah.
every mom that just listened to this podcast is now going,
changing
how do I change the volume
the
in the car?
balance of the speakers in my car. Yep.
That is I wonder how many of the moms that I was around as a kid had that volume down and was listening to everything. That is a genius little tip right there. I like that.
Well, thank you.
That's
noted.
That's-
God.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
I'm
God.
gonna go
It's
figure
not
it out in my
me.
car
I'm
how
sure
to do
it's not
that.
original.
but one thing I'd love to ask is specifically for Elizabeth, but the idea of being a mom and working. Hey, I know, Elizabeth, you're a full-time CPA, tax life.
It is a thing. It is a season of life. Yeah. So I think whether you're working in the home, whether you're working outside the home, you still have a bajillion things on your plate.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. And I think part of it is just learning how to juggle all the balls and being okay if sometimes you drop one. You just can't drop one of the ones that matter.
Yeah.
And I think that that I try to be super involved in the things that my kids are doing. I have been class parent for 10 elementary school years. I have I go into every field day, every class party that my kids have ever had. But sometimes during February, March, and April, I can't do everything, and I can't do those things because our life is kind of takes a back seat to just working for those 3 months that are very hard. And so I have to emphasize the time that I have with my kids. And I might not be able to go help at the class party, but I can send in the cupcakes. And I think that during that time where I'm working more, I have to be okay with my house looking completely like whatever it looks like at the moment, and it's fine and it doesn't matter. I am focused on, are my kids happy? And spending time with my kids and making sure that the important things like homework and being at church are still put into the priority space. And all that other stuff that just doesn't matter for the moment just has to kind of go to the wayside. And my grandmother had a something in her house that said, my house is clean enough to be healthy and dirty enough to be happy. And so I kind of live by that motto of like, I just can't do all the things all the time.
Yeah.
And I would say that most moms, they can't do all the things all the time either. And I know when my kids were younger, I might have our den might be looking great. But if our den is looking great, that means that they've been playing in their rooms. So their rooms don't look great because they've been playing there. And so it's just a constant rotation of where's the mess?
Yep.
Yes, where's the mess? And just there are times where you just have to say, you have to say no. And you have to prioritize the things that are the most important. And that is time with my kids and making sure that they have all of their needs taken care of. Lisa Turkhurst has written a book called The Best Yes. And it's a wonderful book about getting your priorities straight and making sure that what you're saying yes to is the best use of your moment. And I think that applies again to whether you're working outside the home or you're just home raising your kids. Like it's a big deal. And moms that are home with their kids all day, I think sometimes have it harder too because their kids are home all day and they are having to come up with activities for their kids to do all day. And that is also an equally that's hard too, because I know I'm glad sometimes when summer starts when school starts back after the summer, because I've been trying to come up with things to keep my kids entertained but yeah, so I think it's just all about juggling, and you can't hold all the balls. To juggle things, you have to throw them. Each one has to go up and another one comes out of your hand, and making sure that you're not dropping the ones that matter is just the key.
Yeah.
That's good.
I like that. I think just the idea of priorities really because I know for me, I don't have kids. So, throughout these podcasts, I'm talking and, I share and I'm like, I don't have kids, so I can just throw my idea out there and, some people take it and some won't, and it may be completely wrong. But I know, like, for me, I'm a guy that, like, I always want to say yes to things. Sometimes to a fault, I will agree to do something when I have 15 other things. And then I'm like, why did I do that? And so for me, it's just the idea of even without kids knowing like, okay, what's the number one priority? What's the number two priority? Like, what are things that I have to make sure that I know need to be done? And I think just in all of life with kids, but also just in every relationship you have and in everything you're doing, just knowing like, okay, what's the number one priority? What's the number two priority? What are the things that they have to get done, that they need to get done?
Mm.
And then what are the things that, okay, I can throw that ball in the air and say, okay, I'm going to get it. It's not that it's not important, but this is the priority.
Mm-hmm. Or you can toss that ball to somebody else, which I
Yep.
bet you.
Oh, I
you get
toss
the
a lot of,
ability
yes,
to-
I outsource a lot of things. I mean, even outsourcing the grocery shopping, right?
Mm.
You can just put that in on your phone
Yep.
and then just swing by and pick them up. You do not
Mhm.
have to do all the things all the time.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever, by
It's
the
the
way.
best thing ever.
Yeah.
It's
I like it.
solid. Before we close out this podcast, though, I'd love to give both of you a chance to just, whether it's sharing some advice or sharing some wisdom, or maybe it's sharing something that, you know, as our kids were growing up, this was something that happened that, you know, we had to help. Because I know that there's going to be parents, there's going to be moms that watch this podcast that not everything's going the way they planned it. Maybe it's tough. Maybe life is hard. Maybe you're doing everything right and you're looking and you're like, how is my kid still not getting it? And so I'd love to give you a chance to just share any advice or wisdom that you have.
What just came to mind when you said that about parents, you know, something not going right, made me think of a verse. And I wrote it down because I'm terrible remembering chapter and verse. But it's love covers a multitude of sin. And I'm still looking for a chapter and verse for that. And I think it's on this page. 1 Peter 4:8. Above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. And if I quoted that once, I quoted it a million times. And many times I quoted it to myself because maybe I had dropped a ball that I felt like was important and that mattered. And, or maybe I responded in a way that wasn't pleasing to God, you know. Or maybe I was overstressed, overworked, had said too many yeses. I didn't read the best yes until Matthew was like graduating high school or something. I did like that book. It didn't come out till late. But it was a good book.
It's a great book.
It's a good
Highly
book
recommended.
to help you prioritize, because I'm a quick yes person. I love to be busy. I love
Yeah.
to get things done, and that's one of the dilemmas, not a problem, but one of the challenges of being a stay-at-home mom, which I did most of my life, was staying home with them. But I like the sense of accomplishment of getting something done. And when you're staying home with your children, you don't get that sense of accomplishment very often. The house is a mess, and you don't get your checklist completed like you might want. I would always have a little post-it note with some things that I would like to get done today if I could. And yeah, you didn't get to always check those off.
You still don't get to.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably hasn't changed.
Yeah. So, but I would say, you know, just love covers a multitude. So God, you said love covers a multitude of sins, so I'm trusting you to cover this, and God is good. So, yeah, if I could give advice to young parents, I would say pray. God hears our prayers, and God is so faithful. He's so much more faithful to us than we are to him.
Yeah.
And he loves our children more than we do, which is hard to imagine. But he is so faithful to hear our prayers and to honor our prayers and to fill in the gaps that we might leave, and we don't do things perfectly. And he knows them, but he knows our heart. And he's just been very faithful in our lives. So I would say pray, and I would say if you're married with children, give the best gift you can give to your children is a good marriage. So love your spouse, work on that marriage, give that a priority. It is so easy to look past your marriage. It was there first, and then these children come and they take priority.
All the time.
Yeah,
they take all the time.
And they have to, because they're so dependent upon us. And then the marriage takes the back seat, when really studies show that kids that grow up with loving mom and dad are much better off than if we kill ourselves pleasing our children and providing everything for the children, but we let our marriage fall to the wayside. Now, there's no condemnation in that. There are plenty of good parents who couldn't help it, that their marriage didn't make it. So don't hear any condemnation. I'm just saying, if you are still married, make it a priority. That would be one thing that I wasn't told when I was young, and it is important. Yeah, I know you've got a lot more good stuff.
Well, I have a thought. I don't know if it's how good it is, but I think those are great points. Yeah, and but mine is completely unrelated to those things. But I think as moms, a lot of times, especially in the social media world that we live in, everybody's posting all of their good things, and they're posting how clean their playroom is, or hey, guess what, my kid just did this. And just remembering, I don't know who said it, but I don't think it's from the Bible, but I think it's a biblical principle of comparison is the thief of all joy. And when you focus on what everybody else is doing, they're only giving you a highlight reel of their life. They're not showing you everything. They're not showing you, I used to post pictures of my kids when they were little in their little smock dresses on the way to church. But like, there were days where I was like, you smile for this picture because I want it for my memory bank. And they're like, oh, we don't want to smile. And like, so I have all this line of pictures when my kids were itty bitty of wearing all these cute little dresses, because I just wanted to remember the moments of the dresses and the bows that we don't have anymore. But they don't see that I was like bribing them with candy in the background to get them to smile for the Instagram picture, And so just keeping in mind that also what works for somebody's family may not work for your family. Every kid is different. Every kid has a different personality. They grow at different rates. They develop at different rates. And just remember that you need to do what's best for your family. And sometimes that's saying no to other things. But I always think that, making church a priority on Sunday mornings is going to always be the best yes for your family. And it's always going to be something that your kids can look back on fondly, hopefully, of especially kids that are at REVO Church. You are having a great experience in our world, or at least you should be. And so that they can grow up and look back on church with a positive attitude and with fond memories, and that your family made fond memories and they made friends at church, and just not letting that let comparison of what all these other people are doing rob you of the joy that you have in raising your kids now.
Worry less.
Yeah.
Because the kids watch us, and if they hear us worrying, that's not showing faith. And so and then watch our words that we say about our children, how we describe our children to another adult, but we're in front of our child. Oh, he's wild. He's my wild child. Well, guess what? He's going to continue to be your wild child, because they'll live into that principle or the way you just described him. But anyway, that's enough of that.
That's great stuff. I think I'm not a mom, so I don't have any advice to give. And so I'm like, man, that's in my head. I'm like, all right, that's great stuff. Keep that in the memory bank for one day. I know, like, just the whole idea of like the social media, the comparisons, I joke about the Bible studies where people have, their Bible, their notebook, their cup of coffee, the perfect lighting, outside mood, take the picture, like getting in the Word today. And I'm like,
but did you get in the Word?
Did you get in the
Word? Did you just take a picture about being in the Word?
Yeah.
It would take all my quiet.
What did you
time
learn today in the Word besides just the picture of the cup?
Yeah. So I think about that. But that's such good advice. I appreciate you guys being on the podcast today. This was episode 2 of the podcast, talking about pouring into the next generation. Join us next week as we have Our World volunteers talking about what it looks like to not necessarily pour into their kids, but just pour spiritually into the lives of all the kids across the church. So I'm excited that you were here with us, and we'll see you next time.